The Johnsons told me I could join the family getaway only if I covered all the expenses myself. I politely declined. Soon after, I received a notification indicating that my card had already been charged for their flights, hotel stays, and spa treatments. Without hesitation, I opened my banking app, disputed all the charges, and froze the card immediately. At the airport gate, Ryan messaged me saying, "They are refusing to honor our tickets." "What did you do?" I replied, "Just what you recommended. I am paying my own way." The following day, they unexpectedly forced their way into my home. When the Johnsons announced they were heading to Hawaii and that I could join them if I paid independently, I did not argue. I simply smiled and said, "No thanks." I assumed they would leave, return with some tacky souvenirs, and maybe a couple of sunburns, and life would continue as normal. What I did not anticipate was their attempt to financially drag me along on this trip. About 1 week before their departure, something felt suspicious. I was checking my credit card app to confirm enough available funds for a business equipment purchase when I discovered $11,500 worth of charges. These included airline tickets, a luxury beachfront resort in Maui, spa appointments, fine dining reservations, and even a romantic excursion clearly not intended for me. Initially, I suspected identity theft until I saw the email confirmation linked to my own name and address. I contacted the resort and found out that the Johnsons had arranged an expensive vacation for themselves, Emily, and Jake, all charged to my card without my consent. They knew I would never agree if they had asked. I suppose they believed they could pass it off as some sort of miscommunication after the fact. Or maybe they assumed I would not realize what was going on until it was too late to react. What they failed to expect was that I was not in the mood to be manipulated. I didn't even call them. Instead, I opened the app and immediately selected Dispute All Charges. Then I contacted the card company, explained the entire situation, and requested that the card be blocked and replaced. The whole process took about 15 minutes. As I was leaving my office, my phone buzzed with a message from Ryan, who, by the way, was not even invited on the trip. Probably because he could not afford to impress anyone. The message said they were refusing to give us our tickets. When I asked what was going on, I simply replied, "What you told me to do? I'm paying for myself." It turned out the airline did not respond well when they flagged the card for fraud, and the booking was canceled during check-in. I didn't hear anything else until the following morning around 9 o'clock, when someone started pounding on my door. It was the Johnsons, Emily, and Jake, looking anything but sun-kissed or relaxed. They appeared angry and ashamed. Without waiting for me to invite them inside, they barged past me, shouting over each other, insisting on how I could betray them like this. Jake was silent at first, just shocked. They had told him I had volunteered to pay for the trip because they didn't have the funds to cover it. They had spent weeks building hype. The idea of a family holiday seemed exciting to them, but now they appeared dishonest and entitled, because that was exactly what they were. I confronted them directly, asking why they assumed it was acceptable to simply take what belonged to me. I had $11,500 saved. That was far more than just money set aside for a vacation. It represented everything I had. I had given them access to a backup card strictly for genuine emergencies, not to indulge in some unrealistic dream in Maui. They attempted to justify their actions by calling it an investment in the future, and insisted I should feel glad to support the family, especially as they were eager to impress someone who might soon become part of it. That reasoning felt off to me. Emily's boyfriend Jake barely knew me, yet here I was expected to fund his acceptance. Once they saw I was not yielding, they left in a huff. Linda shouted something about feeling embarrassed if word got out they missed the trip. Robert muttered about ungrateful children. Emily refused to meet my gaze. However, that was merely the beginning. I genuinely believed they would back off after that confrontation in my living room, thinking once the trip was canceled and the money gone, they would retreat into silence. But family logic rarely made sense to them. It began subtly. A few emails arrived from suppliers asking if Linda was still managing invoices, which was strange since she had not handled anything for several days. I logged into my business accounts to check further. I noticed her account was still active, so I explored it quietly without making any changes, just observing. She had been assisting me with administrative tasks for about 1 year. I paid her $2,200 monthly to manage emails, billing, and some client follow-ups. It was mostly simple work, but she enjoyed telling others that she was overseeing part of my business. It gave her a sense of importance, and I thought, why not? It saved me time, and she stayed out of my way. However, after what they did, I was no longer willing to be lenient. I immediately revoked her access that evening, changed passwords, secured accounts, and informed the clients directly. The following morning, she left a series of voicemails ranging from confusion to anger. Then she sent a lengthy email claiming I had stripped her of her dignity and accused me of letting money destroy our family bonds. There was no mention of the funds stolen for vacations and no apology offered. Shortly after, my dad appeared without calling ahead. He simply rang the doorbell, arms crossed, waiting as if I owed him something. He walked in confidently, sat down, and started talking about how our family always supported each other, saying I was going too far. He claimed they did not expect me to dispute the charges, and now felt embarrassed in front of Emily's boyfriend. I remained quiet until he brought up the money, explaining they were going through a tough period and just wanted to bring some happiness to the family. I couldn't hold back a laugh. $11,500 spent on spa treatments, luxury suites, and oceanfront views was hardly the kind of thing to cheer about. It was a certain type of budget. I told him I understood what they were truly up to. The vacation was not merely about unwinding, it was all an act. They aimed to convince Liam, Emily's boyfriend, that we were an ideal financially secure family. That if he married her, he would be joining a stable household and perhaps feel obligated to support them, to carry the weight as I had been doing in silence for many years. Robert did not even argue. He simply grew silent and left. That was when I realized I had to speak with Liam. I reached out to him and said we needed to have a conversation. Just the two of us. No drama, no pressure. We met at a quiet diner close to his place. I explained everything. The money, the trip, the true motive behind it, how they had used my name and my card, trying to present me as a generous sister to disguise their desperation. They never planned to repay me. He did not get mad or show any shock. Instead, he quietly listened, nodded slowly, and thanked me for my honesty. He admitted he had been sensing that something felt staged lately, like he was being sold a story. About a week later, he unexpectedly called me. He expressed his gratitude for what I had done and shared his thoughts. He had this small side business, nothing glamorous, but it was expanding rapidly, too quickly for him to manage alone. He needed someone who could bring order to the chaos, someone capable of turning the growing disorder into something dependable. He believed I was that person. I didn't make a commitment immediately, but my curiosity was piqued. We met again, and he explained the figures, the forecasts, the clients he had ready. This was not a scam or a favor. It was genuine, a real collaboration. I told him I would consider it, but in truth, I was already on board. I just had one last loose end to resolve before embracing something new. Because the old existence was quietly supporting the Johnsons' illusions while I managed a small business that no longer brought me joy. That chapter was closing. I sensed something greater was ahead. After deciding to leave my small business behind and accept Liam's proposal, my approach shifted. I became calm, deliberate. I didn't announce anything publicly. I avoided posting online or informing even my closest friends. The fewer people aware, the less chance for mishaps. The lease on the warehouse was expiring shortly. I stopped taking on additional contracts and began selling off equipment. No theatrical closure, just a subtle winding down. I owed no explanations, and I was not inclined to give any. Still, despite the silence, my family sensed a change had taken place. It began with Emily. She sent a carefully crafted email, resembling more a letter aimed at healing than anything else, acknowledging that she understood my anger and respected my personal boundaries. Then she mentioned how stressed Linda had been, how Robert was barely eating, how the atmosphere in the house had turned cold. She expressed that they were all simply trying to cope. For once, I tried to do something kind, and it escalated quickly. She never brought up the 7, not even once. I read her message and chose not to reply. That's when her attitude changed. The following email was shorter, more biting. She claimed I had made my point, and now I was just being heartless. She said I had shamed them in front of Liam, that I humiliated the Johnsons, and if I thought I could simply walk away after everything they had done for me, I was living in a fantasy. That part lingered in my mind. Everything they had done for me. I suppose in her eyes, providing a roof over my head and feeding me as a child came with strings attached. I left the message unread. The next day, Linda called. I didn't pick up. She left a voicemail lasting 5 minutes filled with emotional outpouring, starting with tears and ending in anger, following the same old script. I was tearing the family apart. I was letting money change me. I was pushing them into financial ruin. Then she brought up the business, said she realized her access to it was blocked. She dismissed it as an overreaction, as if skimming thousands from my card and trying to manipulate a stranger into supporting their retirement was just an uncomfortable dinner talk. That voicemail was followed by one from Robert. He skipped the guilt and jumped straight to fury. He said he lost the consulting contract. Apparently someone exposed him for charging hours he never worked. He blamed me for setting off this chain reaction. He accused me of making him look bad and said he couldn't get anything going now because of the chaos I caused. As if any of this was my fault. That was the moment I realized they were unraveling. They sent me an email together this time, offering to start reimbursing me for the trip at $100 per month. I stared at the message, convinced it must be a joke. At that pace, I would recover my money sometime in the 2030s, and they wanted me to agree to it formally, probably so they could use it against me later and claim I accepted their conditions. I responded with a single sentence. No, that was it. After that, things became personal. Ryan accused me of undermining his relationship. He said Liam was distancing himself and blamed me for it. He claimed I manipulated Liam to seek revenge on the family, poisoned his mind with falsehoods, made him question Emily, and now she appeared foolish in front of someone she hoped to marry. That allegation made me understand something important. She was not angered by the breakup itself. She was upset because the truth came out. Liam saw through her facade, and she lost control over the narrative. The very next day, I called Liam. I did not pressure him or ask for explanations. I simply told him that regardless of what happened with Emily, I appreciated all he did, for listening, being honest with me, and the chance he gave me. He thanked me in return. That evening, Liam ended things with her, and that was when chaos erupted. My phone buzzed nonstop like a Christmas tree, flooded with calls, messages, voicemails, and emails, all filled with rage. Linda screamed that I had destroyed Emily's future. Robert declared I was no longer part of the Johnsons. Emily said she hoped I would end up penniless. I felt completely isolated and alone, realizing that Ryan had been using me all along. They labeled me a deceiver, a traitor, and a disgrace, making it clear I was non-existent to them. What they failed to understand was that I had just secured my future. Ryan and I were finalizing agreements for a brand new business venture, and my share would be significant, far exceeding any income I had ever made from the small company. I wasn't swimming in wealth yet, but I was finally headed in the right direction. For the first time, I could breathe freely without fearing which part of my life they would try to dominate next. Plus, the $11,500 was already on its way back to me after the fraud dispute, so I no longer lost sleep over it. Years had passed with me always being the backup option for people who never had one themselves. Now it was their turn to figure things out without my help. After Ryan ended things with Emily, everything in the Johnsons' world fell apart quickly. The breakup was anything but silent. Emily told her friends they were already picking out rings and even hinted at a potential engagement celebration. Her heartbreak was not about losing him, but about losing the vision, the future she had imagined. She shared a dramatic post on social media filled with words about betrayal, snakes hiding in the grass, and false family ties. She never mentioned me directly, but everyone close to us understood exactly who she meant. For the first time, I realized how far their manipulation had spread. Friends in common reached out, attempting to mediate between both sides. Some even sided with Emily. That was acceptable. I did not need to defend myself anymore. I threw myself into work with Liam's startup. It suddenly felt very real. Contracts were finalized, systems were up and running, clients were on board, and the figures were better than I had imagined. We were forecasting almost $9,000 monthly for me in the very first quarter. After struggling for such a long time, this all seemed almost unbelievable. Then unexpectedly, something happened. Around 3 weeks into this fresh start, I received a handwritten letter without a return address, delivered straight to my mailbox. The handwriting was immediately familiar. It was from Emily's ex-husband. We hadn't spoken in years. The split had been rough, and the Johnsons had practically cut him out afterward. I never knew the whole story, only that he hadn't been right for Emily and had disrespected the family. Typical excuses. Yet here he was, reaching out. The note was brief. He mentioned he had heard about everything through mutual contacts. He said he wasn't shocked because it matched the pattern he saw while married to Emily. He claimed he escaped before they could completely drain him and expressed regret that I hadn't left earlier. Then, at the end, a strange line. "If you ever want something solid, call me. I might have a better spot for you at my table." That phrase stayed with me. I hesitated for a day. Then I phoned him. We agreed to meet for lunch in a neutral spot. No pressure. He appeared better off than I expected. He was remarried and now ran a niche logistics company downstate. He said he needed someone sharp to oversee one of the regional operations, someone who would stay steady under pressure and not break down when things got intense. He mentioned he had been observing what I had accomplished from afar. He admired how I had handled the Johnsons, especially the way I had cut ties with them calmly and without drama. He had experience dealing with people like them before, and knew how risky it could be when you allowed yourself to be their primary, secondary, and even tertiary option. Then he presented me with an opportunity. Better pay, more security, a brighter future. It was not easy to let go of the startup. Liam had treated me well, but we had a thorough conversation. I shared the offer details, explained the long-term fit, and said I needed to prioritize my mental health over just money. He understood completely. No resentment. He even offered to connect me with investors if I ever wanted to come back. That kind of respect was something I had not received from anyone in my family in years. Before the month ended, I had officially shut down my small business and started the new position. My initial paycheck was just below $9,000. Clean, well-earned, mine. For the first time in a long stretch, my bank balance did not feel like a desperate lifeline. It felt like a fresh beginning. After that, I rarely heard from the Johnsons, except one message from Linda saying, "Hope you are happy. We are not." She was right. I was. When the first sequence of $9,000 paychecks arrived, I began to realize how much my life had changed. Life could feel overwhelming when you were not fully present. always calculating how many days could pass before someone noticed a missed payment. I moved into a nicer apartment, clean and quiet, not extravagant, but without dripping faucets or the smell of cigarette smoke embedded in the walls. I stopped living as if I were a single broken appliance away from catastrophe. No one knew that I had shut down my business except Ryan and a handful of old clients. I did not post about my new job or share anything online. I was not hiding. I simply chose not to broadcast. I had realized that good news could quickly become toxic when the wrong people felt left out. Yet silence has a way of drawing attention. Sure enough, it began with a knock at my door. It was Linda. I had not seen her face to face since the day the Johnsons barged into my home over the canceled vacation. Now she stood there holding a Tupperware container as if we were neighbors, not strangers who had severed ties over $11,500 in years of manipulation. She did not ask permission to enter. She only said she was worried about me, wanting to make sure I was okay after everything. I barely opened the door. I asked how she had found my new address. She gave a vague answer about a Christmas card list and shared family resources, which confirmed everything I suspected. She must have accessed some old shared account or gone through the mail before I officially updated my information. When she realized I was not going to let her in, her tone shifted immediately. She said it felt wrong for a daughter to shut her mother out like this, that families always find a way to forgive. I asked her if she planned on returning the money the Johnsons had spent. She blinked as if the question caught her off guard, then said, "Joanne, it was not about the money. You made it all about that." I shut the door behind me. That same night, I received a fraud alert from my bank. Someone attempted to reset the password on one of my oldest business checking accounts that I had not used in over a year. There were still a couple of $100 inside, just enough to make it worth a try. The recovery email linked to the attempt was an address connected to Robert. I froze the account, changed all my security details once again, and filed a report. I knew it would likely lead nowhere legally, but I wanted it on record. The issue was not the money. It was about the message. They were trying to get back in by any means possible. For a few days, I heard nothing from them until Emily texted me, "You are pathetic, running from your own family and hiding behind other men." That message stopped me. I knew exactly what she was doing, trying to strike a nerve she believed was still tender. She was implying that I was not strong enough to confront them, that I depended on Liam and her ex-husband to rescue me, that I could not act independently without becoming someone else's side project. It was so obvious, almost laughable if it weren't so exhausting. I chose not to respond. Then something unexpected occurred. 1. Late at night, just past midnight, my phone rang from an unfamiliar number. Normally, I avoid answering those calls, yet something urged me to pick up. It was Ryan. His voice was unusual, worn out, weary, possibly intoxicated. I could not be sure. He got straight to the point. "I did not touch your accounts," he claimed. I sat upright, listening. He went on, "I know what they are accusing me of. That I aided them, that I shared your information." I was speechless. We had not been in contact for several months. Ryan was not meant to be mixed up in this mess. However, in my family, no one ever truly stayed uninvolved. "They are desperate," he confessed. "They have been searching for a way to force you to fix things. They claim you owe the Johnsons for destroying everything, for turning Liam against us, for cutting off Linda." I asked him why he was revealing all this now. There was silence for a moment before he said, "Because you are not wrong, Joe. You just happened to be first." Then the call ended abruptly. I sat motionless, staring at the wall for quite a while. Not out of fear, but because it confirmed what I already suspected. They would not cease their efforts. They were incapable of stopping. They did not seek peace. Instead, they craved control. Now, being cut off, They were collapsing from all sides. But I was no longer their refuge. Not anymore. Ryan's call lingered in my mind much longer than I anticipated. I had not heard him sound so clear-headed in years. He always seemed to avoid family turmoil, as if it did not touch him. Yet now he sounded like someone who had finally faced the full force of the storm. I realized there was a center, and it was not me. It was them. I chose not to answer him. Not at that moment. I valued the warning, yet I had other priorities. The work with Ryan's ex-husband, David, was progressing much better than I had imagined. What began as a regional operations role gradually evolved into a near-full partnership. He entrusted me with important accounts, allowed me to have decision-making authority, and even let me shape client strategies. Within 4 months, I was not only earning $9,000 per month, but was also managing entire departments. The contrast between how he treated me and how the Johnsons did was striking. Whenever I proposed an idea, he was willing to listen. If I asked for resources, he made sure I got them. When I declined something, my choice was respected. There were no feelings of guilt or sneaky tactics, just straightforward business conducted with integrity. For the first time in my life, I didn't have to feel sorry for being intelligent, careful, or protective of my time. I assumed that was where the story ended. However, it was not. One evening, after a late dinner with clients, I returned home. Upon entering the hallway of my apartment building, something felt wrong. My doormat was missing. Initially, I thought the wind might have carried it away, but then something else caught my attention and stopped me in my tracks. A handwritten note was slipped beneath my door without an envelope or a name. It read, "You don't get to erase your blood." Though it was unsigned, I did not need a signature to identify the author. The handwriting was unmistakably my father's. I reported the incident to the building security, and they began to review the surveillance footage. Nothing useful had been left behind. Whoever did it waited until the hallway camera's blind spot appeared. Typical behavior. That was the breaking point for me. I changed my phone number, got a P.O. box, froze my credit once again, and updated every single password, including those I hadn't touched in many years. Then I did something unexpected. I met up with Liam. We had not talked much lately, just the occasional text. He had moved on, was seeing someone new, and seemed to be doing well, but he was still someone I trusted. We met for coffee, and I shared everything with him. The note, the attempt to access my accounts, the unannounced visit from Linda, the call from Ryan. He listened attentively, then said something I hadn't considered. "You know what the worst part is? They believe this is only temporary, that you will break down sooner or later." I asked him what he thought I should do. He leaned back and said, "Now you have choices. Influence, leverage, power. They despise that, but deep down they respect it, even if they never admit it." His words stayed with me all day. That night I went home and began writing a letter. Not to them, but to myself. A list of everything they had stolen from me over the years. Not just money, energy, and time, but peace, opportunities, and trust. Then I wrote a second list. Everything I had gained since I cut ties with them. When I finished, a simple truth became clear. I owed them nothing, not even resentment. So I took one more step. I called my lawyer and asked for a straightforward, airtight formal document to be prepared. Cease and desist orders. I sent them separately to each person involved. The Johnsons, Emily, even Ryan. The tone was firm but not hostile. I was clear that any additional communication, whether direct or indirect, would lead to legal consequences. I was serious. They did not answer, not a single response. Suddenly, the disturbance ceased. For the first time in many years, calm returned. It was not an uneasy silence caused by avoidance or friction, but genuine, steady tranquility. No phone calls, no messages on voicemail, no emails filled with guilt disguised as attempts for reconciliation, only peace. I continued developing with David. The small regional operations role we began with transformed into something completely new. Within 8 months, he presented me with an opportunity for equity. I did not accept immediately. I carefully reviewed the figures, consulted on the contract, and ensured it was not another trap, but everything was clear, fair, and balanced. I agreed. My earnings doubled and then tripled. Yet, even more important than money was the sense of meaningful work. I was no longer struggling to patch together payments just to pay rent. I was creating something substantial. The apartment, once a stopgap, became my home. I painted the walls, invested in proper furniture, cooked meals for myself, and finally slept soundly. The dread each morning disappeared. I no longer felt the need to constantly watch my back. Some evenings I would simply sit by the window and breathe deeply for the first time in ages. I was free from fears of someone using my identity to open credit or book flights, free from fearing cryptic social media posts designed to coerce me into submission. Simply breathing. Ryan once asked me what I desired most of all in this entire situation. Not wealth, not the enterprise, not even vengeance. Just a single word: peace. And now, I have it. Some believe that cutting ties with your family is abnormal, thinking it must be harsh or distant, implying you're somehow flawed. Yet the reality is some families shatter you long before you realize the damage they have caused. For some of us, leaving is necessary to rediscover who we truly are beyond the pain. I did not depart because I stopped caring for them. I left because the Johnsons never genuinely attempted to love me the way I needed. They cherished the version of me who agreed, who silently paid, who allowed them to write her story as if she was fortunate just to be part of it. But the me who refused, who set limits, who demanded to be recognized as a complete person, not just a wallet with a heartbeat, was not acceptable to them. So I became unacceptable. And that is fine because I appreciate this version of myself. The individual who rests soundly, the one who signs her own paychecks, the person who does not justify herself to those who never truly listened. If you are reading this and it resonates, maybe the moment has come. Not for drama or conflict, but for peace. You have the right to choose peace, even if it means walking away from those who call themselves your family. Especially then.